Hi, do you like anime? Do you like books? Do you like video games? Would you like for other fans of all those things to bully and look down on you for liking an inferior version of their product? Well, do I have the rabbit hole for you. I've been getting really into PowerPoint presentations lately. Nothing gets me going these days like seeing a curriculum summarized in a limited number of key sentences and diagrams, but it can get kind of intense sometimes. I can only handle so many transitions, you know? So I've been looking for something a little more slow-paced to relax with, and that's what led me back to visual novels. I used to be really into them back in the day, and it was really nice getting to reconnect with these stories after all these years. And since I can't really enjoy anything without feeling the need to monetize it, I wanted to make this video, where I go over the broad strokes of the medium, and I'll even throw in some recommendations for those of you who want to have a good place to start. So, with that, this is a beginner's guide to visual novels. If we have to start at the very basics of what a visual novel is, then I'd say it's what you get if you wanted to read War and Peace with a bunch of anime girls and the riveting gameplay of Cookie Clicker. For some people, starting up what is essentially a 30+ hour book that you read on your computer might be a bit daunting, so I'll start off with something a little more digestible, as we have these games that are technically visual novels, but they try their hardest to make you think otherwise. As to keep your gamer brain's attention, they'll throw in some tests for your elementary level deductive reasoning or basic reading comprehension every once in a while. Wow, you sure did a fine job following that drink recipe. Here's another hour of dialogue for you to read. Man, I'm sure glad I'm not reading a book right now. These devilish games are meticulously designed to lure in undiscerning gamers who aren't on their guard. They're the fun brownies of visual novels, though I think the technical term would be interactive adventure games. These are your Ace Attorneys, your Danganronpas, your Zero Escapes, etc, etc. And in those types of communities, it's easy to be led astray. Your newfound interest in detective-style games might lead you to pick up something like 428 Shibuya Scramble, classic mistake. There's not a single alcoholic drink for you to mix in that game, and somehow you're fine with that. That's how you know you've gone too deep. Before you even know it, you have your own personal read order for every Roots and Clan ad, you get uncontrollable spasms every time someone even mentions jumping straight to muv-luv alternative without playing the original, you're playing sets of Melty Blood in some public bathroom, and you haven't taken a shower in 5 weeks. That's it. You're a visual novel reader. There's no going back now. Or, you know, that's one way it could happen. The DS library alongside PC RPG Maker games like To the Moon or Mad Father were definitely there to show me how games could tell more complex stories without relying on gameplay to keep you engaged. But the game that really cemented me as a full-blown visual novel degenerate was Katawa Shoujo. This was basically the entryway visual novel back in the early 2010s, as in a time when opportunities to play visual novel games through official channels were sparse, Katawa Shoujo was both easily available and, more importantly, free. It was written and developed by a team of 4chan users, making it one of the few good things to ever come out of 4chan, and it's a fairly simple yet sweet game about a boy with a heart complication who's sent to a school for students with special needs. And like many romance visual novels, there are several routes telling about his relationships with the different girls, all dealing with their own challenges and disabilities. And yes, that does sound kind of like some weird fetish game, but it's actually very wholesome and sweet, I swear. While even back then I could notice that this was made by a group of amateurs, there is a lot of passion to be found here, and I think they deal with its potentially problematic themes in a way that made it more than just some strange gimmick, making it quite a heartfelt story. And you can turn off the 18+ scenes if they make you uncomfortable. Yeah, I didn't mention those, did I? It's wholesome, I swear. Do you honestly think that 14-year-old me, being the good Christian lad that I was, would stoop to such degeneracy as to— Handcuffs? Now, this segues nicely into a topic that is, for better or worse, closely tied to the world of visual novels. Hentai. You know, it was always only a matter of time before I got around to talking about it on this channel. I'm not gonna go into too much detail or anything, because the topic of pornographic visual novels or eroges could probably be a video on its own. The thing is that getting people to buy a 70-hour book with some pictures can be kind of a hard sell sometimes, so what often ends up happening is that the writers write the entire story and then at the end they just sort of sprinkle a few graphic sex scenes in there to make it more exciting. Now, these scenes are in a lot of cases removed in later releases as well as in the Western localization. And look, I don't consider myself a prude, and I really don't want to get into the more controversial aspects of this topic. If the game was always made to be an eroge, then there's nothing wrong with that. But, you know, when you're presented with this masterfully written and well-crafted story, and then you hear that the original release had a bunch of full-on sex scenes for you to jack off to, it's kind of like being at a really fine restaurant with, you know, comfortable seats, mood lighting, a chandelier the size of your bedroom, you know the scene, and they bring up this amazing looking dish with some French name I can't pronounce and a bunch of vegetables that I've never even heard of. Fancy shit, you know. And then, just as the waiter leaves after calling me sir, I get a small peek into the kitchen and there's just like, you know, a dead dog lying on the counter. It's kind of a mood killer, really. And I'm still gonna enjoy my meal, it would be a waste not to, but I will wonder in the back of my head, like, what the fuck was up with that dog, you know? Although, the disclaimer they put up at the entrance did say that the dog was over 18, so I guess I won't worry about it. Anyway, I'm not trying to upset anyone, but it is hard to get away from the fact that there is a high likelihood that your favorite visual novel was a porn game at some point. It kinda comes with the territory. On the flip side of that, you know a game has to be good if it managed to find recognition and acclaim with there being absolutely no sex involved at all. If my life was a visual novel, it would be an instant classic. But this does kinda lead into the topic of why visual novels can be so hard to recommend to people. I'll show up to a friend with one of my favorite stories and they'll go, "Oh, visual novels, is it? Isn't that just, you know, hentai with extra steps?" And I want to dispute it, but then I realized that I just recommended The Devil on G-String. Or Wonderful Every Day. Or Fate. You know, I could go on. I mean, if you want a testament to this, just look at what happened to my Steam recommendations after I revisited a few visual novels to get footage for this video. I'm having a bit of trouble seeing the correlation between me playing Clanad and me being interested in Fetish Locator Week 2, especially when Katawa Shoujo already had me covered on that earlier. And why would you recommend me being a dick when I've been doing that my whole life anyway? Because you played Valhalla's cyberpunk bartending action, we think you'd like Futa Fix Dick Dine and Dash.
Finally, some good fucking food.
You really do get me, Steam. There's also kind of a misconception with visual novels being synonymous with dating simulators, which also don't have the best image out there. No disrespect if you enjoy dating sims, of course, we are all degenerates here, and I'm not one to make fun of people for finding enjoyment in things. You do what makes you happy. I'm just saying, if I had to throw someone under the bus to justify my love for visual novels, dating sim fans would be the first to go. Those people? No, I don't associate with them, bunch of Candy Crush weirdos, am I right? So anyway, as I was saying about Tomoyo being the perfect tomboy, I think two major issues the medium faces are those of availability and length. Knowing something will take 50 hours to read through is certain to be discouraging to anyone. Couple that with the fact that you may have to settle for some second-rate translation half the time, if it even has a translation at all, and it's not exactly an easy sell, is it? I mean, hell, take Fate, maybe the most famous and acclaimed visual novel out there, and the only way for an English speaker to experience it is through a 10-year-old fan translation that isn't great from my experience. And because I'm stubborn, I've completely refused to watch any of the Ufotable anime or any other Fate-related thing until I've read through all the 100 hours of the original Fate Stay Night visual novel, because that's how it is, you know? You see a hot anime or manga adaptation for a visual novel and you go, yeah, I'd rather read the source material. I'll get to it one day when I have 70 hours to spare, even though you know deep within your heart that you're never gonna read it. And some people might say that I'm depriving myself of fun for no apparent reason, whereas I say that that's exactly what being a visual novel fan is all about. One thing that I noticed jumping back in after all my years of absence is the large number of visual novels now getting official translations, making them a lot more accessible. Gone are the days of having to download 20 zip files for 12 hours just for the slight chance of the game maybe booting up. The Rona's got absolutely nothing on the myriad of viruses I exposed my PC to at the age of 14, I'll tell you that. Or maybe I was just being a dumbass. Of course, you'll always have the occasional mishap where you'll see a subset of the fanbase being unhappy with the localization jobs done for these versions. And while I usually just prefer to do things as simple as possible, I can't help but feel a tinge of admiration for the people who'll go, okay, you see, this game was originally released only in Japan for the Nintendo Virtual Boy, but if you download this ISO for the unreleased Chinese version of the remake for the PlayStation Vita, then you can apply this fan translation patch that comes in 5 parts and with a 10-page instruction manual to get the true experience of the game. What about the Steam version? The Steam version's shit, we don't talk about that. On the flip side of that though, I couldn't help but notice that while a lot of visual novels have become a lot more accessible in the last years, the ones that are being talked about in the community seem to be, by and large, the same ones that used to come up 5 to 10 years ago, whereas I don't see a lot of newer games gathering all that much excitement. If you want a clear representation of this trend, we can take a look at the user ratings on the visual novel database. Here we see that out of the 30 highest rated visual novels of all time, only 8 of those were released in the last 10 years. And if we disregard remakes and sequels to older games, that number goes down to 3. And obviously, a list like this isn't gonna be completely representative of the actual quality of games being released, and you can make the case that newer and less established series have a lower chance of being translated and therefore picked up by Western fans, and those are fair points. I'm not gonna make any bold claims like, visual novels are dying, because 1, I don't believe that's true, and 2, I am far too uninformed on the subject to make such claims, but I do think that what you may call the golden age of original visual novels is unfortunately behind us. I don't want that to discourage anyone from getting into visual novels though. There are so many great reads out there that I think it would be a shame to never at least give it a try. I did promise that I would recommend some beginner-friendly games to get you started, so here I'll wrap things up with that. I think a good place to start, if you're somewhat reluctant to sit down with what is essentially a 30-hour book, is to maybe try out some of the more video gamey VNs that I mentioned earlier. And out of these, I would personally recommend picking up the Nonary Games collection on Steam. These are some really intriguing mystery stories with fun characters and puzzle-solving segments to break up the long reading sessions. And these were also some of the first visual novels that I ever played, so they have a really special place in my heart. While I'm not the biggest fan personally of Doki Doki Literature Club, it is both short and free, making it a really good entry point, basically filling in the space that Katawa Shoujo did back in the day, though I imagine that a lot of you probably already know what the game is about, which does take away quite a bit from the experience. Though if you're in the mood for a short yet thrilling experience, then look no further than the incredibly beloved Song of Saya. Written by Gen Urobuchi, writer of great anime series like Psycho Pass and Fate Zero, this one is great if you're a horror fan, though it does come with a trigger warning list that could make up a novel by itself, so if you're a bit sensitive to uncomfortable imagery or topics, but you still want a short yet wholesome visual novel to get into, then maybe try out Planeterian, Reverie of a Little Planet. This one is made by the same studio that did Clanad and centers around a little place of safety and comfort in a world that has nearly been completely destroyed. And lastly, if you don't mind a bit of a longer read and you want to jump into what I would consider some of the best the medium has to offer, then I would personally recommend picking up The House in Fata Morgana. This one starts with you waking up in an old mansion without any memories of who you are, with a strange, stoic maid saying that you are the house's rightful master. To regain your memories and to uncover your true relationship with this house, she takes you through the tragic stories of the house's former masters, which are all set in different points in history, and as you go, you slowly unravel what is one of my absolute favorite stories ever of human connection and perseverance. I do think that this is a good entry point, as it is an entirely self-contained story with a fantastic conclusion, and while it is longer than any of my previous recommendations, it's still on the shorter side when you compare it to many of the other well-beloved visual novels out there, and it is also quite linear, meaning that there aren't any branching routes you have to keep track of, and you can see the entirety of the story in a single playthrough. So yeah, with that, I hope you feel ready to jump into the world of visual novels. If you enjoyed this video to the end, please consider subscribing for more of my various obsessions. I'm sure that, if you do, that one translation that you're waiting for is coming right around the corner. This has been Avantgarde, and I'll see you next time.